Welcome to Pragmatic Talks, a podcast and video series where we discuss startups, contemporary digital product development, modern technologies, and product management. This episode is brought to you by Pragmatic Coders in collaboration with Agile by Example, one of the largest Agile conferences in Europe. We believe that everyone should have equal access to knowledge about product development and entrepreneurship, and also everyone should have the opportunity to apply it in pursuit of making our world a better place. Through this series, we aim to create an impact on the future world. In today's episode, we welcome Kirill Klimov. Kirill is a seasoned Agile coach and consultant. He's involved in the worldwide Agile community, contributing through blogs and articles and speaking at conferences and meetups. In this episode, we are diving into the flight levels model. This strategic framework is key for planning and implementing endeavors. We'll uncover its benefits, especially for the fintech sector. We'll discuss how it tackles unique challenges, fosters organizational change, and spurs improvements. Also, we'll dive into the future of management methods. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kirill Klimov. Welcome in the next episode of Pragmatic Talks. Today we are at Agile by Example conference, and we are with our guest, Kirill Klimov. So, very first question, Kirill. Our audience would love to hear more about you. So, who is Kirill and what is your story?
First off, thanks for inviting me. Excited to be here. Great to be at the Agile by Example conference. Great conference. So, I've started my career from the technical path, so with being software engineer in the past. Part of my career, which basically was a bit more about the decade in product development. I was in a distributed organization. We were building software as a service, even though it wasn't called using these terms back those days. Like as always with the smaller organizations, I had a great chance to work on very different stuff, not all engineering, some else involved in sales, involved in support and all that. So obviously learned quite a lot. Because of all those interesting challenges, I've spent there a bit more than a decade. And during that time, actually the Agile term hit me, and basically I started to explore and learn more about those ideas and concepts, and basically started to introduce some of that for our team initially, and then it was Scrum initially, and then we tried some of the more Kanban stuff. It was obviously working and bringing some success, and it was very interesting to me. So I've started to help some of the friends having the same challenges, and that's how initially my kind of consulting career split it on. So basically the second part of my career, which was also a bit more than a decade by now, I was splitting in between internal and external role, primarily helping organizations to change using this set of Agile approaches. Again, initially more focused on the teams, working with teams, and later on more on the culture, structures, leadership, which is always or oftentimes very much connected to these changes. So that's what I'm doing these days, so helping companies go through the change with the help of modern management approaches.
Okay, great. So in today's talk at the conference, you spoke about flight levels. Tell us more, starting from the beginning. What is it? And of course, you will be repeating some things from the talk. And everyone who would like to hear more about flight level, I truly recommend Kirill's talk from Agile by Example.
The metaphor is very easy. It's that depending on the altitude of your flight, that's the level of the detail that you can see. So if you are flying on the airplane, really very high, probably you can see hundreds kilometers around the surface. However, you don't see any of the details on the surface. On the contrary, if you are basically flying really low, you can see all the details, maybe the buildings, maybe what's even happening within the building, but you don't see the bigger picture. And all those flight levels, they have their specific attributes or properties, pluses and minuses, and all those perspectives are valuable. And if bringing it to the organizational context, there are 3 levels, and the first one is the team level. So basically everything happening with the teams. It could be different structure for the teams. It could be stream-aligned teams, enabling teams, platform teams using team topologist terminology. Teams could be using different processes like Scrum, Kanban, something else. Their own ad hoc processes doesn't matter. And obviously the value is created on that level. Second level is the coordination level, and that's kind of the value stream where the value actually get delivered to the customer. So if we are talking about the product, that's the product level or the service level. Again, it's not necessarily, but my experience with a lot of organizations is that oftentimes in order to deliver value to the customer, more than one team is involved in that. If so, then you have to coordinate somehow in between those teams, and this level is what it is about. And then the third level is about the strategy. Where are we going? Why we are building this? And like what's our mid and longer term plans in terms of product or the whole organization. So those are three levels, and they provide like this special kind of lens you are viewing your organization through. And then there are 5 activities, and basically you apply all 5 activities on all the levels. And then like different organizations, of course, will have like different challenges, but then by applying those, you can improve over time.
So for some people, that might sound like, like a flight level has something in common with the organizational hierarchy.
Yeah, that's very common. I like to think about those like 3 levels as a lens, not the hierarchy. All the hierarchical stuff basically sits within second level coordination. Because there might be multiple teams, multiple streams, and still all of that is at the second level. So if you think about like what is called the Agile scaling challenges or issues, all that is leveled. Most of actually complexity goes there as well.
So it's not like, that if I am in the lowest part of the organization, I'm just a regular employee, I shouldn't look at the higher level. I should look through all of the levels.
That depends. Usual consulting answer. That highly depends on basically how your organization is structured, because again, these are just lens. Now, what type of collaboration and communication in between you have, really depends on the organization. The most probably complex part of all this is the so-called system architecture or system topology, when you are building this for your organization. And there are like a lot of different patterns how that can go. How those levels are kind of connected and working with each other. Shorter answer to your question, like it could go like really differently. Sometimes actually as a team member, I'd like to limit amount of stuff kind of involved, and in order to decrease my cognitive load, because like it's impossible.
Yeah. So could you provide some of examples of objectives or metrics that are used on this level, so people could have like a more clear view on what we mean by each level?
Again, let's start with the coordination one. Product relevant stuff will be relevant there. So like what we are building, how we are measuring it. It's like already the level of the customer value. So basically it could be like what we are bringing to the customer. On the team side, again, depending on what's the objectives of the team, like what you are delivering. If it's for stream-aligned teams or fully featured teams, that basically would be the same, like you're bringing the value to the customer. So it's kind of the same metric. However, if it's, let's say, enabling team, that would be like how you are serving other teams. For example, you're on board in there with some new process, new technique. That would be your metric objective. And then strategy level, like obviously, and bigger objectives, how we are achieving those, and then learning and feeding it back to make an effect for change our strategy according to our program.
Okay, so those few levels and few different levels of goals, objectives, they're interconnected somehow.
Absolutely. Or at least they're expected.
So it's pretty similar to OKRs, objective key results, or...
With the OKRs, you can cover again the different levels.
Yeah. So you can use together OKRs in flight levels as well.
A lot of people are using actually OKRs.
That was my first impression. It's very similar, so it asks itself to actually use together.
Again, there is no contradiction. So if you are using OKRs, you can continue doing it with the flight levels. If you are about to start using flight levels, you don't have to use OKRs, but you can. I mean, it's...
So from your experience, how does that thinking model helps organizations, help people to execute their strategies better?
Again, it's not only about the strategies. There are like several typical challenges that flight levels is about to address first. I don't really see a lot of companies like really missing strategy. It's not that they don't know where they're going. It's more or less always there. It's more the disconnecting between strategy and the operation. So, or like strategy is not explicit or not shared within the organization. So like somebody knows about it and a lot of other people don't. Or it's like changes too often, don't spontaneous. And that might look scary for others if they don't see the reason behind that. And then obviously the disconnecting between strategy and operation. So that's one of the typical challenges flight levels are addressing. Another one is just basically the value stream. So one of the things that is like so well described is one of the initial books. And like we may have a lot of agile teams, and like on the team level, it's like working perfectly. The team can deliver something, but then as a whole organization, not much is happening, and basically there is not much of the value delivered where all the team are so great.
Because that's something that was delivered. It's not something that was right. Like
again, on the team level, it's okay, but like in between teams, it's got lost.
Or handovers and few other things could go wrong there. Okay.
Yeah, that's other typical one. But those again, there was a kind of the quick, easy starters on reasoning why you would start using flight levels, but it's just a start, because later on, by seeing the organization through this different lens and applying those 5 activities, you find like what's your like real pain point, or where you have to focus your attention at the moment, like where to improve, and you improve, and then you move on. And through that process, basically, that's the way how you can improve your organization.
Flight levels actually provide more transparency to the entire organization, like in terms of the transparency about strategy and execution of those strategy on the other way around. Is correct?
Yes, sure.
Okay. You already said a little bit that you need to design the solutions that fits to the context of the organization when you are trying to implement that model. How is it related to systems thinking, or is it related at all?
Yes, I think the easiest way to explain and to connect it to the system thinking would be through that process that I've already mentioned, which is in flight levels terminology called flight level system architecture, like creating topology for your organization, basically designing this system for your organization. And that requires quite a lot of system thinking. And like overall, I think the part of the challenge is that most of the people like on the ground, and by on the ground, I mean like within the organization, they don't have this expertise in kind of designing and building organization.
Yeah.
That's not the stuff they're doing, right?
Yeah.
They're building either like product, their service, bringing it to the customer. It's not that they learn like how to build organizations. Oftentimes people who are working like spend whole their career in one organization. That's why basically the process might be challenging, because you see it like through some predefined lens and you don't see a lot of different options. And that's basically where like external help might be useful just to extend your perspective. That's actually what happens with that system architecture. Basically, you see what you have and you see like what are the options of like designing around it. And like obviously you're designing around like the value stream, so how value is delivered through your organization. And with that, we are trying kind of not to do a structural change right away. At least like not the first thing to happen. Like later on, maybe if you decide that it's a good move, okay. But at least not starting from the structural changes, because those are like the heaviest changes.
It's actually not the first time in the Pragmatic Talks that I hear from experts that organization structure changes should actually follow some other changes, not trigger the changes itself. So I think that there is something important in that.
First of all, it requires oftentimes a lot of work. There will be some pushback. It's most of the time it's like put pressure on people, because it's like really changing not only the way they work, direct reporting lines and so on and so forth. It's like really heavy stuff, and usual challenge we see with all this agile stuff, like don't plan up front when you have least information, because oftentimes those like structural changes kind of plan up front, like with having like some ideas and intentions, but not necessarily it's gonna fly out. So again, from my experience, it's way more often than not better to basically observe and learn how the value is delivered, like what's required for that, and then try basically to organize ourselves around that. And not always you even have to make structural changes in order for that.
What I've seen a few times in my history when I was like I used to be a consultant and worked in organization was that often, actually pretty often, the structure organization changed itself. Like you didn't need to design it. If you change some processes or actually change the goals, objectives for people, etc., they follow that and they figure out how to change the structure. Even if the official structure didn't change, roles, objectives, way of working changed. So actually, later on changing the names of the role or moving them somewhere in the structure was just a formality. Yeah. So
it highly depends on the organization and basically what's possible and what's not. Because if your scenario is possible, that's great. With some organizations, like I can imagine, it would never happen. Because basically there is too many constraints that would prohibit people from.
Of course. And then the culture also matter. Yeah, if there are people who.
And basically, what could be done is that you remove those constraints so that's possible.
Yeah, and sometimes the constraints are people.
Then it's hard.
Yeah, but you can remove them. At least in some contexts, in some countries, it's not so easy. It's not so difficult to fire someone.
And it's like one of the mantras. I think I've learned it from Less Community, which I like quite a lot, is job security, but not role security. When on going through the change, we are not going to fire you, but your role is likely to change.
Yeah, so you need to adapt to a new reality, most probably. And this is something that, like nowadays happen a lot, like people need to adapt really, really fast to fast changing reality, even if the organization is not under any transformation or whatever, because like everything is changing so fast that we need to follow it and we need to.
But even that part might, like sometimes it's like too pressuring on people, because when they realize, okay, like my role is not relevant anymore. And with some organizations, they are really fine. Okay, sit back, look around and find like what you're going to do. Like what's the way, how you're going to bring the value to the organization. It might be too stressful to solve.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
They could have a hard time basically find their new role, and they may leave because of that.
So you already mentioned that it doesn't matter actually what methods, tools the teams use when working with white loads.
Actually, not only the teams. So it could be like something bigger than that, like something used for coordination as well. So I mean,
so for example, using less and flight levels.
There are plenty of basically reports of people who use SAFe and then flight levels on top of that, and how flight levels was helpful, because again, the usual story is that like SAFe is oftentimes at least perceived as kind of too complex, too complicated, with like really a lot of stuff, and people
not so agile,
not like willing to dive into all of that in order to do something. So viewing it through this lens could like really help getting value out. I know quite a lot of people who are using it.
So what about, let's say, Kanban portfolio management? It could be used in the same way like teams use Kanban, we use portfolio management to actually manage the value streams.
Like overall, I would say that
strategy.
Flight levels, a lot of that stuff comes from Kanban body of knowledge, if you wish. And all the authors initially involved in the Kanban community. So it's a lot of similarity in the ideas and basically then evolving and emerging. But some of the tooling that was built like through the years, some of those are like to me unique. Like I haven't seen it around it, like really useful, again, when building, for example, that organizational topology, when exploring how you are approaching the work and how you're interconnecting the systems. Some of that stuff is new.
There's many of people who, think about Kanban as something like, we have a board, like Trello board, Jira, whatever, and we use Kanban. That's it. But even as you mentioned right now, like there is much more behind of it. So could you help our listeners to understand what the Kanban is and what it is not or not yet? Like definitely the board itself shouldn't be called Kanban.
I'm not even trying to fight that war of like what should or should not be called. Yes, Kanban is way more. And that was exactly the feedback at one of my Kanban classes years back. Like usually at the end of the class, I have the closing circle with people like sharing some reflections on what they've learned and basically what they might have find. The sharing was that like before the class, I thought like what we are about to do like 2 days here, like Kanban, it's just a board and with limits, right? So like it's half an hour of learning. What else? And basically now after the class, I realize there are so much more, and there are like other classes. So there is like way more stuff built together over the years. Now I see it, and I won't be able to show like what's built over the years, like in few minutes. And however, that is exactly one of the challenges I'm seeing around, because again, the other feedback from another participant of my class was again comparing it. He was sharing that, okay, before the class I thought that kind of Scrum is easy to understand, hard to do. With the Kanban, I can see that basically there's so many stuff that it's like even understanding takes some time. And that's exactly the challenge I'm facing, because like very often, I mean, yes, you can start basically just with the board
wherever you are,
limitations, right? But in order like even to design the Kanban system, to start using it, it's kind of couple days class, and people are really not ready to invest that time. And that's why there is a need for more lightweight approaches. I don't know if it's good or bad. I don't know if we should should we kind of try to force some, at least like minimal amount of learning before doing something or not.
I think we are
to try and basically to see if it works in it, because really sometimes it's kind of not a question. Like if it's, let's say 2 days, it's not happening.
I think we are not empowered to, like we cannot prohibit someone from using a board and calling it Kanban. They could do this and harm themselves a little bit, or maybe not. Maybe that will be the very first step that they will make. Then they will learn something new, add, let's say, whip limits on each column, and then add something else, start measuring things.
And happens anyway all over. People just like read on the Wikipedia what Scrum is and start using it. And then basically everybody blames Scrum because it's not working. Come on.
I think that our job is to build this awareness of what the methods are, and try to teach as many people as possible on how to do it well. So sooner or later there will be this enough people on the market who will just telling others, no, it's not as you think. It's way more complex.
But that's also very much functional, the method or approach, and like really what's the amount of stuff like you have to learn before you can start using it. I think it is very relevant question of finding easier ways of using some of this stuff and introducing it to the organization. And that's where flight levels like really.
I was about to say that
really promise.
I was about to say that may be a good way to introduce other tools, other methods to the organization, because actually it sounds to be easy to implement at the very beginning, and starting from that level. And then when you have some metrics, when you already have some thinking model about your organization, you can see that, for example, there is something missing on the delivery level, and you need to improve it to have like a better value stream or something. So then you're at least motivated to do some changes or invest some time. As you mentioned, that people don't have time to invest to learn something, but when you see it, you can simply see the need for investing that time.
Or like you starting, let's say, with the strategy because you think there are some challenges there, and then you basically realize your like value delivering is not working, and then you focus there because, like, of course, in order to execute on the strategy, you have to bring value, so you have to have functional level 2 in order to start working on the strategy, because there is no point on strategy if you cannot deliver anything to life.
So it's pretty similar to the promise of a Scrum that I heard like years ago, that Scrum will not fix any of the problems that you have. It will only show you where the problems are and make it so painful that you will have to solve them one day or another.
I mean, yes and no, because with the 5 activities, basically you're measuring and you're improving. So yes, they are pretty generic, and you'll have to find your way to do it depending on the level. So kind of the implementation, like details, because like, for example, even the first one, let's say, visualize the situation. So how you are going to visualize stuff on team level, on the value stream level, on the strategy level would be different. Or the second one, creative focus, right? So like, what are the constraints and how you gotta do it on the team level, again, stream level, and then the strategy would be very different. Still though, like if you're going and doing that, you're going to improve over time. So yes, you'll have to think about the implementation on the particular level, and that would be different. And you may have some experience from what you've been doing in the past, and you can reuse it, or like you'll have to find new ways of doing it. But still, like after you're doing it, you're gonna be improving your system. Because like, for example, just to provide kind of quick illustration so it's not that abstract, creating the focus like on the team level or even the stream level, like limiting work in progress would be one way of doing it. Time boxing would be other way of doing it, typical for Scrum, right? Now on the strategy level, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I painfully felt it recently when we tried to do this. No, it doesn't work.
You have to find the other ways. And yeah, there are other ways. And like other way around. So basically, the way how you're going to implement these practices across the levels would be different. Like still you have general guidance, and also you have like community of people who are not really even important, the community of people who are doing it. You have like a lot of people who are doing it even like without calling it this name. So you can definitely look for like inspiration, advices, whatever you call it, basically steal it from others.
You already mentioned a few times those 5 activities from five flight levels. Could you name them and recall like for the people?
Yeah, so that is like visualize the situation. Most of us are in the knowledge creative work, which is, again, by definition, kind of intangible. You cannot see the result of the work. Therefore, visualizing the work like is a prerequisite for being able to collaborate around it, to align on it, and so on and so forth. And like, of course, you can do it on all the levels. Create the focus. So that's basically about like constraints or like how you are more or less kind of selecting what to do.
And then not disturbing people with other things. Like, as you mentioned, in Kanban, it will be weekly limit, work in progress limit. In Scrum, it will be sprint with the sprint goal where the focus came from.
And basically, you're taking all the stuff that you're capable of delivering. So and then we are establishing agile interactions so that we can like, obviously operate the whole system and make the work like flowing through it. Measuring, and of course, in order to improve, which is the 5th one, like you have to measure like where you are, and that measurement is like product side, where you have to measure in order to be able to improve what you are delivering and then adjust accordingly, but also for the change, because in order to meaningful change, you should not only understand like where are you going, but also like how you're going to measure your progress. Because if not, then later on, how you can evaluate if you're like close or not.
And then improvement,
and then you
iteratively improve measuring.
that. And what is important in the flight levels context, basically you apply those on 3 different levels, because it's gonna be different. So you're doing it with your team in order to improve like how your team works and like what your team is delivering. You're improving it on the stream level, value stream level, in order to improve how teams interact together in order to bring value to the customer. And you're improving it on the strategy level as well in order to, again, align the work that you're doing with the goals where are you.
So what about the frequency of measuring and improving?
That depends on
the level. Like I can imagine that on the team level it's probably most often, but then the value level, product level is a little bit less often, and the strategy you are not changing, you are not messing around like very often.
But you are still kind of observing, monitoring.
So measurement happens like...
It could happen like all the time. Leave, and then the cadence of like other activities. Again, you're designing it, so in different contexts it could be different. Strategy, like I've just got today this question, like after the talk, like the strategy review, the adjustment of your strategy based on how you're going, like how often to do that. From my experience, it might happen like once in quarter, once 2 months, maybe not more often than that, because again, not enough probably gonna happen. Still, though, I can like easily imagine some contexts where even more often would be applicable, possible. But that will require probably a bit more of instrumentalization behind that.
If you could provide an advice for leaders, especially leaders from some, very complex organizations, like big organizations, very heavily regulated organizations, where to start or how to start with flight levels? So what would be the advice where to start?
I should fall to like the usual answer, which is it depends, but I can clarify, because oftentimes challenges that organizations are facing are very, very different. Basically, you should start like addressing your kind of main issues, challenges at the moment, and from there, maybe like after that is solved and not a main issue anymore, you'll jump to something else. However, oftentimes it is a problem or a challenge even to see like what's your main problem. In order to do that, sometimes visualization can help, sometimes like bringing some measurement and thinking about like metrics.
Searching for bottlenecks, for example, like measurements, visualization. Oh, here we have bottleneck, so here we have some problem.
I don't think just that, but observing that over time will potentially reveal some bottlenecks. And again, it's like every system, like obviously had the bottleneck. The problem with all this creative work is that the bottleneck is moving through the system. Because if it's like the static place, it's like easy to spot, and probably like you've already not only figured it out, but fix it. But way more interesting and challenging and interesting because of that is that when it's dynamic, so it moves over time, and then how you manage that.
Okay, let's try to imagine what future will bring us. You already mentioned that what you already see is that people, organizations require some kind of simplifications and some easy method to actually start making changes. When the learning curve is to step and people need to learn a lot to actually start working, they usually don't have time for that.
I mean, that's yes and no.
Okay.
Because it would be nice, like for this kind of the concept, idea, model, metaphor, whatever, to be attractive and easy enough to start with. Because like overall, the world became only more and more complex. Organizations are like really complex for a good reason. They're not going to like oversimplify, and it would be naive to expect like simple solutions to fix like really complex organizational problems. And that complexity overall, I would say is about to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's first of our internal capabilities should grow as well in order to support that. However, it doesn't mean it should be there from the very beginning. So we should start from somewhere. We should see method approach at least helping us along the way with a lot of change overall in the organizational change as well. Momentum is built. So basically when you see something is working, you are ready and willing to invest more time and energy into it. And that's what I think a lot of people are looking for.
How do you think what the role of AI will be in the modern management method? This is the question that I am recently asking to everyone to whom I speak.
Two parts of the answer. First one, I think you probably already got it from a lot of people, which is while not necessarily AI is going to kill a lot of jobs, still with that, people who are using AI would be way more efficient than those who are not. Actually, other thing is that, that's kind of interesting that it's something that I was about to put it into the blog post for a pretty long time, still wasn't able to do it, so I can quickly share. Interestingly, years back, I was thinking, okay, probably the first jobs it's gonna kill would be kind of more mechanic, simple jobs like the drivers, so autonomous driving and so on and so forth, and kind of we are fine. We are in the creative industry, all coaching, all that stuff. We are fine. We are safe. Interestingly, it turns out to be other way around because with the let's say some of the let's say autonomous driving, there are legislations on the way, so it's not everywhere for sure. It's not gonna be anytime soon. With that, I can see AI already doing quite good on coaching side. So that one for sure that kind of affected already. So that's very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Other part is that it is already huge in the learning process. So how you can learn new stuff and to what extent it might be helpful already. So if in the past, let's say, I don't know, you are internal change at Scrum Master, you have some challenge you're facing. I don't know, you have to run your second retrospective in your life. And last time you did it, so you have something, and now you basically heard from somewhere that you should be switching different approaches, different formats so that your team is not bored and basically it works. You can these days easily discuss it with ChatGPT and get ideas from there. And
at least some inspirations. Yeah.
It is perfect for that matter. And basically you can not only get the new direction, direct learning from it, but also new directions. And for that purpose, it's really perfect. Not even starting the whole point about using it with the software engineering, Copilot. That's also really, really working at.
Okay, so last but not least, according to what you said about AI, how does impacting our work, some things will change, some things will stay the same. Of course, it's impossible to prepare fully to anything that will happen because we still don't know what will happen. But how people could prepare themselves, their organizations, they approach to building, creating strategies, implementing those strategies to what is going on the market right now, and this I don't want to use the word revolution, but the progress that we as a humankind are making thanks to the AI.
I think that's kind of the universal, and my advice won't change. I don't know to what extent it's practically helpful, but that is building the internal capability for the business agility of your organization. So basically being ready to change because the change it's coming, it's inevitable. The more capability for quicker change you have, the better you'll be over the years. But again, this is the case for many, many years. Those companies who are able to address the change and react to some changes, but also not only being in the reacting mode, but also trying to basically predict what's happening, evaluating, experimenting on what makes sense. Obviously they're gonna be more successful.
Thank you very much. That was quite brilliant advice. As you said, pretty universal, but I believe it's still valid, and not so many organizations or people in organization are aware of it yet. So it's good to repeat it over and over again.
See, it's crazy because like oftentimes we tend to too much fall into the like situation, like what happened. If it's fine now, if it's okay now behind, that's kind of the general case, general issue. Like I've seen it so many times. So like, for example, for organization, for the top of the organization, it might be obvious that like in the 5 years, there is no future. Like if we have to change, if we are not changing, somebody else eating our not breakfast, like everything, like everybody in the organization, like for the whole middle management, there is no motivation to change. We have plenty of cash at the moment. Like it's okay now. Like why we have to? And that's the big issue. That's one of the real challenges. Basically, a lot of organizations are facing, and how you're going to spread that motivation for change. Because again, sometimes it's clear to somebody, and then how you're communicating that. Sometimes it's not even clear, but then basically, boom, and next day somebody is eat all your records.
Yes, so thank you very much, Kirill. It was a great pleasure to talk with you about flight levels, about all of these thoughts, about strategy, about how organizations should approach the changes that we are facing all the time. Thank you to everyone who watched it. I hope you enjoy it. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. But also, Kirill, how to find you in the internet?
Easiest way finding me would be like through the website, kirillklimov.com, like easily searchable, and then social networks, like all that stuff. So I'm there. Feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much, and see you in the next episodes. Pragmatic Talks is delivered to you by Pragmatic Coders, the first choice software development partners for startup founders. Be sure to catch all new episodes. Subscribe to our YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcast channels. And if you are thinking about building your own startup or struggling with product development, contact us and find out what we can do together.